The stars burned cold above the battlefield of Kepler 442b. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the distant flashes of light that marked another skirmish between human forces and the Valdris Collective. 6,000 years of war. 6,000 years of blood, sacrifice, and stubborn refusal to die. The Valdris had arrived at Earth in the year 2157. They came not as explorers or traders, but as conquerors. Their massive ships blocked out the sun over every major city. Their message was simple: surrender or be destroyed. They had conquered 1,000 worlds before Earth. They expected humanity to fall within a week. That was their first mistake. The initial invasion killed billions. Cities burned. Nations fell. The old world ended in fire and screaming. But humanity did not surrender. In bunkers and caves, in mountains and underground cities, the survivors gathered. They fought back with everything they had: guns, bombs, and eventually weapons they built by studying crashed Valdris ships. The Valdris were confused. No species had ever resisted them for more than a few months. Humans lasted years, then decades, then centuries. The war that was supposed to end quickly became something else entirely. It became eternal. Elena's great-grandmother had told her stories passed down through generations, stories of the first resistance, when humans fought with primitive weapons against energy shields, stories of the Great Push, when humanity finally took the war beyond Earth, stories of the Long March, when human colony ships spread across the galaxy, always fighting, always surviving. Now, in the year 8157, humanity controlled over 200 star systems. They had built warships that could match Valdris technology. They had created soldiers who were born, raised, and trained for nothing but war. And still, the Valdris kept coming. "Commander," said Lieutenant Chen, stepping onto the observation deck, "the Valdris fleet has entered the system. 47 capital ships, 200 support vessels." Elena nodded slowly. "How many did we lose at the border station?" 3,000 soldiers, 12 ships." She closed her eyes for a moment. 3,000 more names to add to the endless list of the dead. 3,000 more families who would receive the small metal stars that marked a loved one lost in the forever war. "And the civilians?" she asked, "evacuated before the attack." All 40,000 made it to the transport ships. That was something. At least, in 6,000 years, humans had learned many lessons. The most important was this: protect the children, protect the future. Every human child was precious. Every human life was a victory against extinction. Elena turned from the window and walked toward the command center. The halls of the station were filled with soldiers moving to their posts. Young faces and old faces, men and women and everything in between. All of them carried the same look in their eyes. Not fear, not anger, something deeper, something that the Valdris had never understood and probably never would. It was purpose. The command center was a massive room filled with screens and holographic displays. Officers sat at dozens of stations, tracking enemy movements, coordinating defenses, and sending orders to the fleet. At the center of it all stood Admiral Marcus Stone, a man who had fought in 20 major battles and survived them all. "Elena," he said as she approached. "Good. I need your assessment." She looked at the main display. The Valdris fleet was moving in standard formation. They always did. In 6,000 years, they had never changed their tactics. That was another thing humans had learned about their enemy. The Valdris were ancient and powerful, but they were also rigid. They did what had always worked before. They could not imagine that it might stop working. "They're coming for the orbital factories," Elena said. "If they destroy them, we lose the ability to build ships in this sector for at least 5 years. "Agreed. What do you recommend?" Elena studied the display. The Valdris had numbers on their side. They almost always did. The collective controlled over 10,000 star systems. Their population was beyond counting. They could lose 100 ships and build 1,000 more. But humans had something the Valdris did not have. They had learned to fight smart. They had learned to use every advantage, no matter how small. They had learned that war was not just about strength, it was about will. "We hide the factories," she said. "Move them to the dark side of the gas giant. The radiation will mask them from Valdris sensors. Then we let them think they've won. Let them land troops on the planet. Let them spread out." Admiral Stone raised an eyebrow. "And then?" Then we hit them from everywhere at once. We've been preparing the ground forces for months. Every city is a trap. Every road is mined. Every building is a fortress. We bleed them until they retreat, and then we chase them back to their ships. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. It's risky. If they don't take the bait, they will, Elena said. They always do. The Valdris expect us to fight like them. Stand in a line. Meet strength with strength. They've been fighting us for 6,000 years. And they still don't understand. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. Stone smiled. It was a hard smile, worn by decades of war. Give the orders. Let's show them why humanity is still here. Elena turned to the communications officer. Send word to all ground commanders. Operation Endless Night begins in 6 hours. And tell them. She paused, thinking of her grandmother's stories, of all the generations who had fought and died so that she could stand here today. Tell them to remember who they are. Tell them to remember what we've survived. 6,000 years of war. And we're still standing. The message went out across the system, bouncing from ship to ship, station to station. Soldiers heard it in their barracks. Pilots heard it in their cockpits. Civilians heard it in the evacuation ships, holding their children close. And in the darkness of space, the Valdris fleet moved closer, not knowing that they were flying into the jaws of a species that had refused to die for 6,000 years, a species that had turned survival into an art form, a species called humanity. The war was about to enter a new chapter. But the ending would be the same as always. Humans would fight, humans would bleed, and humans would still stand strong. The Valdris landing ships descended through the clouds of Kepler 442b like metal rain. Sergeant Thomas Reed watched them from his position in the ruins of what had once been a shopping center. Around him, 200 soldiers waited in silence. Above them, the enemy filled the sky. Steady, he whispered into his radio. Let them land. Let them think they've won. The Valdris were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters in height. Their skin was pale blue, and their 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through steel. Their eyes were black pools that showed no emotion. They had been killing humans since before recorded history ended and the Forever War began. But Thomas was not afraid. Fear was a luxury that humanity had given up long ago. In its place, there was only cold determination. The first wave of Valdris troops touched down in the city center. They moved with the confidence of conquerors, spreading out to secure the empty streets. Their commanders probably thought this would be easy. Another world. Another victory. Another step toward finally ending the human problem. Thomas counted the seconds. The plan required patience. Rush too soon, and the trap would fail. Wait too long, and the enemy would find the hidden forces. Everything depended on timing. His earpiece crackled. All units. This is Commander Vasquez. Operation Endless Night is active. Execute on my mark. Thomas gripped his weapon tighter. It was a pulse rifle, human-made, designed to punch through Valdris armor. His grandfather had carried a similar weapon. So had his great-grandfather. So had every Reed going back 20 generations. War was the family business. Mark. The city exploded into chaos. From every building, every sewer, every pile of rubble, human soldiers emerged and opened fire. The Valdris, who had been walking confidently down the main street, fell in waves. Their shields flickered and died under the concentrated assault. Their screams filled the air. Thomas led his squad through the ruins, moving from cover to cover. A Valdris warrior appeared in front of him, raising a weapon that glowed with purple energy. Thomas fired first. The alien fell, and Thomas stepped over its body without slowing down. This was the human way of war. Not grand battles in open fields, but ambushes and traps. Not strength against strength, but speed and surprise. The Valdris had more soldiers, better technology, and 1,000 times more resources. But humans had 6,000 years of experience in fighting enemies who should have won. Squad 2. Move to position Delta, Thomas ordered. Squad 3. Cover the eastern approach. Don't let any of them reach the communications tower. His soldiers obeyed without question. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every human child learned to fight almost as soon as they learned to walk. It was not cruelty. It was survival. The battle raged through the city for hours. The Valdris called for reinforcements. More troops landed. More troops died. The streets became rivers of blue blood and human red, but the humans held their ground. In the command center aboard the orbital station, Commander Elena Vasquez watched the battle unfold through dozens of cameras and drones. Her face was calm, but her heart beat fast with pride. These were her people down there, her soldiers, her family, in every way that mattered. The Valdris are pulling back from the industrial sector, Lieutenant Chen reported. They're consolidating near the spaceport. Elena nodded. Good. That's exactly what we wanted. Signal the reserve forces. It's time to close the trap. From hidden positions outside the city, thousands more human soldiers began their advance. They moved in perfect coordination, cutting off every escape route. The Valdris, who had come to conquer, found themselves surrounded. On the ground, Thomas Reed reached the communications tower just as a squad of Valdris elite warriors did. These were the best the enemy had. Bigger, faster, better armed than the regular troops. Any one of them was worth 10 human soldiers in a straight fight. But humans had long ago learned not to fight straight. Grenades, Thomas shouted. His squad threw a dozen explosive devices at once. The blast threw the Valdris backward, breaking their formation. Before they could recover, the humans opened fire from multiple angles. Thomas felt a burning pain in his shoulder as an enemy shot grazed him. He ignored it. Pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive, still fighting. The last Valdris elite fell, and Thomas allowed himself a moment to breathe. Around him, his soldiers were checking their weapons and treating their wounds. 3 of them were dead. 5 more were injured. But the tower was theirs. Sergeant Reed to command, he said into his radio. Communications tower secured, ready to broadcast. Elena's voice came back, clear and strong. Outstanding work, Sergeant. Hold that position. We're about to send a message. The human forces had prepared for this moment. Hidden transmitters activated across the planet, linking to the communications tower. A signal burst outward, reaching not just this system but every system where humans lived, and every system where the Valdris might be listening. Elena spoke into the broadcast system, knowing that billions of humans and countless Valdris would hear her words. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Forces. Today, on Kepler 442b, we have defeated another Valdris invasion. Your ships are burning. Your soldiers are dead or captured. Your victory was denied. She paused, letting the words sink in. To the humans who hear this, stand strong. We have fought for 6,000 years, and we will fight for 6,000 more if we must. Every world we hold together. Every battle we win together. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not forget. We do not die. She turned to the Valdris frequency. To the Valdris collective. You have tried to destroy us for 60 centuries. You have failed. You will continue to fail. Because we are not like the other species you have conquered. We do not break. We adapt. We survive. We fight back. And we will never, ever, stop. She cut the transmission. In the ruins of the city, Thomas Reed heard the message through his earpiece. Around him, his soldiers stood a little taller. Their wounds hurt a little less. The dead friends they had lost felt a little more honored. He looked up at the sky, where the last Valdris ships were fleeing toward the edge of the system. Human ships pursued them, weapons blazing. Another victory. Another day. Survived. Thomas thought of his children, safe on a colony world 3 systems away. They would hear about this battle. They would learn from it. And someday, they would fight their own battles in the forever war. That was the human way. Pass the torch. Keep the fire burning. Never let the darkness win. He picked up his weapon and began walking toward the next objective. The battle was over, but the war never ended. And as long as humans drew breath, it never would. High Commander Zethrix stood before the Council of Elders in the great hall of the Valdris homeworld. The room was ancient, built long before humans had even discovered fire. Its walls were lined with the skulls of conquered species, thousands of them, millions of victories stretching back through the ages. But there was one space on the wall that remained empty, one species that had refused to become a trophy, one enemy that had haunted the Valdris for 6,000 years, humanity. Explain yourself, said Elder Korvax, the oldest member of the council. His voice was like grinding stone. You promised us victory at Kepler 442b. You promised us the destruction of their shipyards. Instead, We receive reports of disaster, 47 capital ships lost, 100,000 warriors dead, another defeat. Zethrix kept his face neutral, though inside he burned with shame. The humans used tactics we did not expect. They allowed us to land, then attacked from all directions. Our forces were overwhelmed. Tactics we did not expect, repeated another elder, her tone dripping with contempt. We have been fighting these creatures for 6,000 years. How can their tactics still surprise us? It was a question that Zethrix had asked himself many times. The Valdris had conquered over 10,000 worlds. They had defeated species far more advanced than humanity, species with better weapons, better ships, better technology. All of them had fallen within years, sometimes months. But humans were different. They adapt, Zethrix said slowly. Every time we find a way to defeat them, they change. Every weapon we create, they copy and improve. Every strategy we use, they counter and reverse. It is as if they were born for war. Elder Korvax leaned forward. We were the masters of war when their ancestors lived in caves. We built an empire that spans the galaxy. How can these short-lived creatures stand against us? Zethrix had spent his entire life studying humans. He had read the reports of every battle, analyzed every defeat, and questioned every captured human prisoner, and slowly, he had begun to understand something terrible. They do not fear death, he said. Not the way other species do. When we conquered the Benlari, they surrendered when we killed 10% of their population. When we conquered the Morathi, they surrendered when we destroyed their homeworld. But humans, he shook his head, we killed half their population in the first year of the war. They did not surrender. We destroyed their homeworld's surface. They moved underground and kept fighting. We pushed them to the edge of extinction 100 times. Each time, they came back stronger. The council was silent. These were facts they all knew but hated to hear. There is something else, Zethrix continued. Something in their nature that we do not possess. They call it many things. Hope, stubbornness, spite. But whatever it is, it makes them impossible to break. Elder Korvax's 4 hands clenched into fists. Nothing is impossible to break. We simply have not applied enough force. With respect, Elder, we have applied more force against humanity than any species in our history. We have killed more of them than any other enemy we have faced, and yet, their population is larger now than when the war began. Their territory has expanded. Their technology has grown to match our own. Then what do you suggest? Demanded another elder. That we admit defeat? That we accept these vermin as equals? The very idea was unthinkable. The Valdris had never accepted any species as equal. The galaxy belonged to them. It was their right, their destiny, to rule over all other life. But Zethrix had seen things that made him doubt. He had watched human soldiers charge impossible positions with smiles on their faces. He had seen human ships ram Valdris carriers to save a single transport full of children. He had read the transmissions humans sent to each other, full of love and defiance, and an unshakable belief that they would win. I suggest, he said carefully, that we consider a new approach. Not peace. The humans would never trust us, and we would never accept them. But perhaps, a pause, a chance to rebuild our forces, to study them more carefully, to find the weakness that we have missed for 6,000 years. The council erupted in angry voices. How dare he suggest retreat? How dare he admit that the Valdris could not destroy a single species? It was treason. It was cowardice. But Elder Korvax raised one ancient hand, and the room fell silent. I have lived for 9,000 years, the elder said. I remember the day we first received signals from the human homeworld. We thought they would be easy prey, another primitive species to add to our collection. I remember the first invasion, when our warriors landed on their planet with certainty of victory. I remember the surprise when they fought back, the confusion when they did not surrender, the anger when they began to win. He rose slowly from his seat, his ancient body creaking with the effort. For 6,000 years, I have watched this war. I have seen us pour more resources into destroying humanity than we spent on the last 1,000 species combined. And what have we achieved? Nothing. They are still there, still fighting, still standing. Elder Korvax walked to the empty space on the wall where the human skull was meant to hang. He placed one hand on the cold stone. I do not know if we can defeat them, he said quietly. I do not know if anyone can. But I know this. They have shown us something we never wanted to see. That the universe is not ours by right. That there are species who will fight for their existence no matter the cost. That conquest is not inevitable. He turned back to the council. High Commander Zethrix is correct. We need a new approach. Not because we are weak, but because the old ways have failed. For 6,000 years, we have tried to destroy humanity. It is time to try something else. What would you have us do? Asked one of the younger elders. Korvax was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke a word that had never been spoken in that hall before. Learn. Learn what makes them different. Learn why they will not break. Learn the secret of their strength. And perhaps, in learning, we will find the key to their destruction. Or perhaps, he paused, and his voice became almost sad, perhaps we will find that there are some enemies who cannot be conquered, only respected. The council sat in stunned silence. Respect for another species. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. But as Zethrix looked at the empty space on the wall, he could not help but wonder. Perhaps the humans had already won something greater than any battle. Perhaps they had proven that even the mightiest empire could not crush a species that refused to give up. Perhaps that was the true meaning of the Forever War. The memorial garden on New Earth stretched for 100 kilometers in every direction. Each flower represented a human who had died in the Forever War. There were billions of them, covering the land in a sea of white and red and gold. Elena Vasquez walked among them slowly, reading the names carved into the small stones at their base. Maria Santos died defending Luna Station. Year 2203. James Chen died in the Battle of Proxima. Year 3847. Little Amara Reed, age 7, died during evacuation of Colony 17. Year 5691. So many names, so many lives cut short by the Valdris. Elena had walked this garden many times, but it never got easier. Each name was a universe of possibilities that had been destroyed. Each flower was a family that had lost someone they loved. Her communicator beeped. She looked at the message and felt her heart skip. All senior commanders report to High Command immediately. Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha had not been used in 300 years. It meant something big. Something that could change the war. 1 hour later, Elena sat in the Great Council chamber of High Command with 50 other senior officers. At the front of the room stood Admiral Stone and a young scientist that Elena did not recognize. The scientist looked nervous but excited, shifting from foot to foot as he waited to speak. Thank you all for coming, Admiral Stone said. What you are about to hear is classified at the highest level. It cannot leave this room. Dr. Patel, please begin. The young scientist stepped forward and activated a holographic display. An image appeared showing a strange structure floating in deep space. It was clearly not human or Valdris. It was something else entirely. 3 months ago, Dr. Patel said, one of our exploration ships discovered this object at the edge of the galaxy. It is a database. A library, really, left behind by a species that lived long before the Valdris or humanity existed. A murmur ran through the room. Ancient alien artifacts were not unheard of, but they were rare and usually damaged beyond usefulness. The library contains information about hundreds of species, Patel continued, including the Valdris. We have learned things that could change everything. He changed the display to show a timeline. At one end was a marking that indicated 12,000 years ago. At the other end was the present day. The Valdris began their conquest approximately 12,000 years ago. In that time, they have destroyed over 10,000 species. But what we did not know, what no one knew, was this. Every species they conquered shared a common trait. They were all social species that depended on central leadership. When the Valdris killed their leaders, destroyed their capitals, and broke their command structures, these species simply gave up. Elena leaned forward. She could see where this was going, and her heart began to beat faster. Humans are different, Patel said. We have always been different. Our history is filled with examples of groups fighting on after their leaders were killed, of soldiers continuing to resist even when their governments fell, of ordinary people becoming resistance fighters when there was no one left to give them orders. He changed the display again, showing a comparison between humans and other species the Valdris had conquered. The Valdris do not understand this. Their own species has a rigid hierarchy. Orders flow from the top down. If their council of elders were destroyed, Their entire civilization would collapse into chaos. They cannot comprehend a species where any individual can become a leader, where anyone can choose to fight. Admiral Stone stepped forward. Dr. Patel is telling us what we have always known in our hearts. We are different. We are special, not because we are smarter or stronger, but because we refuse to quit. Every human is capable of resistance. Every human is a potential threat to the Valdris. That is why they have failed to conquer us. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard. But that is not all we learned from the library. We also learned the location of the Valdris homeworld. Silence fell over the room. For 6,000 years, the location of the Valdris homeworld had been the most closely guarded secret in the galaxy. No human ship had ever even come close to finding it. We cannot destroy it, Stone continued. We do not have the forces. But we can strike it. We can send a message that the Valdris will never forget. We can show them that no matter how far they run, we will find them. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. Pride, hope, the knowledge that after 6,000 years, humanity was finally taking the fight to the enemy's home. This mission will be dangerous, Stone said. Perhaps suicidal. I will not order anyone to volunteer. But I am asking, who will carry the fire of humanity to the heart of the enemy? Every hand in the room went up. Every single one. Stone smiled. I expected nothing less. We will select the best crews from the best ships. The mission will launch in 3 months. And when we arrive at the Valdris homeworld, we will do what humans have always done. We will remind them that we are still here, still fighting, still standing. Elena thought of the memorial garden, of the billions of flowers, of all the lives that had been sacrificed so that this moment could happen. For 6,000 years, she said quietly, we have been defending, running, surviving. It is time to show the Valdris what humans do when we go on the attack. The officers began to talk among themselves, excitement filling the room. Plans were made, names were suggested. The greatest military operation in human history was beginning to take shape, but Elena walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valdris homeworld waited. Somewhere out there, the creatures who had tried to destroy humanity for 60 centuries lived their lives, confident that they were safe. They were wrong. Humanity was coming, and, for the first time in 6,000 years, the hunters were about to become the hunted. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Valdris home system. 50 ships, the finest vessels humanity had ever built. At their head flew the flagship Endurance, commanded by Elena Vasquez. For a moment, there was only silence on the bridge. Every officer stared at the screens showing what no human had ever seen before. The Valdris homeworld, a massive planet circled by 1,000 orbital stations and defended by a fleet larger than anything humanity had ever faced. So that's it, said Lieutenant Chen softly. The heart of the enemy. Elena nodded. Her hands were steady on the arms of her command chair, but her heart was pounding. 6,000 years of war had led to this moment. Billions of human lives, countless sacrifices, all of it building toward one simple act of defiance. Begin broadcasting, she ordered. The communications officer opened a channel that would reach every station, every ship, every corner of the Valdris home system. Elena took a deep breath and spoke. This message is for the Valdris Collective, for your Council of Elders, for every one of your kind who has ever thought that humanity would be easy to destroy. She paused, letting her words sink in. 6,000 years ago, you came to our world. You demanded our surrender. You expected us to fall like every other species before us. We refused, and for 60 centuries, we have been proving you wrong. The first Valdris ships were already moving to intercept them. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Elena kept her voice calm. You have killed billions of us. You have destroyed our homeworld. You have pushed us to the edge of extinction more times than we can count. And still, we are here. Still, we fight. Still, we refuse to surrender. She stood from her chair and walked toward the main view screen. The Valdris homeworld filled the display, blue and green and beautiful in a terrible way. We did not come here to destroy your world. We do not have the power, and we would not use it if we did. We are not like you. We do not seek to wipe out entire species, but we came here to show you something. To prove something. The Valdris fleet was closing in. Alarms were beginning to sound across the human ships, but no one panicked. They had known this would be a one-way mission for most of them. They had volunteered anyway. We came here to prove that there is nowhere you can hide, no fortress strong enough, no distance great enough. As long as humanity exists, we will find you. We will fight you. We will never, ever stop. Elena turned to her crew. These were the best people she had ever served with. The bravest, the most dedicated. Some of them would not survive the next hour. All of them knew it. It's time, she said. Launch the message pods. From every human ship, small pods shot outward. They carried no weapons, no soldiers, only data, the complete history of humanity, stories of their triumphs and their failures, art and music and literature created across 6,000 years of war, the names of every human who had died fighting the Valdris, and a simple message, recorded in every language humanity had ever spoken. We were here. We fought. We survived. Remember us. The pods scattered in every direction, programmed to spread across the galaxy. Even if every human ship was destroyed today, the pods would find their way to inhabited worlds. Other species would learn of humanity's struggle. The story of the Forever War would never be forgotten. Valdris fleet, in weapons range, Lieutenant Chen reported. They're preparing to fire. Elena looked at the approaching enemy ships. So many of them. Enough to destroy her fleet 100 times over. But she felt no fear. Only a deep, quiet pride. Thomas, she said into her communicator, using Sergeant Reed's first name for the first time. Are the ground teams ready? Reed's voice came back strong and clear. He was on one of the transport ships, leading 1,000 soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission. Ready, Commander. Just give the word. While the Valdris fleet focused on the human warships, the transports would slip through the gaps in the defenses. They would land on the Valdris homeworld itself. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to plant flags. Human flags. On the soil of the enemy's most sacred ground. A symbol. A message. A promise. Go, Elena ordered. And Thomas, come back alive if you can. Your children are waiting. I'll do my best, Commander. See you on the other side. The transports broke away and accelerated toward the planet. The human warships moved to cover them, drawing the attention of the Valdris fleet. The battle began. Elena watched as the first human ship exploded under Valdris fire, then another, and another. Her people were dying, but the transports were getting through. Concentrate all fire on the lead Valdris carriers, she ordered. Give our people as much time as we can. The Endurance's weapons blazed. For a few glorious minutes, the human fleet fought like nothing the Valdris had ever seen. Ships that should have retreated pressed forward. Captains who could have saved themselves chose to sacrifice their vessels to protect the transports. One by one, the human ships fell. 20, 30, 40. But the transports kept flying. Then Reed's voice crackled over the communicator. We're on the ground. Repeat. We are on the ground. Flags are being planted. The Valdris are going crazy down here. But we're holding them off. Elena smiled through her tears. Well done, Thomas. Humanity is proud of you. Commander, there's something you should know. The people here, the ordinary Valdris, not the soldiers. They're just watching us. Some of them look scared, but some of them look curious, like they've never seen anything like us before. Elena nodded slowly. That was the real victory. Not the flags, not the damage they had caused, but the simple fact that humans had walked on the Valdris homeworld, had shown the enemy that they were not monsters or demons, but people who fought for their survival, people who refused to give up. Get your people to the evacuation point, she ordered. We'll pick up as many as we can. The Endurance was damaged now, fires burning across several decks. But she was still flying, still fighting, just like humanity had been doing for 6,000 years. In the end, 12 human ships escaped. Out of 50, Thomas Reed was among the survivors, carrying wounds that would mark him for the rest of his life. But he had done what he came to do. As the survivors jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Valdris home system behind, Elena looked back at the view screen. The enemy would be angry. They would want revenge. The war would continue. But something had changed. Humanity had proven that no one was safe from them, that even the mightiest empire could be challenged, that the Forever War would truly last forever, as long as humans drew breath. On the Valdris homeworld, 1,000 human flags flew in the alien wind. Small pieces of cloth marked with the symbol of Earth, reminders that humanity had come to the enemy's doorstep and said, "We are not afraid." 6,000 years of war. And humans still stood strong. They always would.